We're going to do a show, and we're going to do it live. Welcome to Inside Coverage here at the Combine, everybody. We said 2 days ago that we were going to do the show standing up, and then Jori and I decided C-Rob is like 10 feet taller than us, so we're not going to do it. I'm Andrew. That's Jori. That is Charles Robinson. How are you, friends?
I am doing well. Andrew had the distinct pleasure of seeing me at 9:59 sprinting across the JW Marriott hallways today, and he's like, "Are you on your run?" Or I'm like, "No, I'm just late for a 10 o'clock meeting." So that's been my day. We had a 10, we had an 11, we had a 12, now this is the 1, but that's what the Combine's about. That's what you want.
You're running, you're getting your steps in. A buddy of mine with the Browns joked yesterday that his Fitbit sent him a message, "Did somebody steal this?" because he's walking so much, and he rarely does, that's how much you're walking around here. But, yes, this morning, 9:59, I get out of an elevator, and I'm walking down a very long hallway. JW, a bunch of hotels connected. I'm with some friends from the Browns, and all of a sudden I hear this, "You can use this in the show." Okay.
Hi, Andrew.
Right.
Bye, Andrew.
Jori has her backpack on, and she's not jogging.
No.
She is in a full-out sprint, as if she is being chased, okay, with her backpack, both shoulders, right? So it's flopping a little bit, but you are sprinting. And I said, "Is this your morning run?" Because if you follow Jori on IG, you know that sometimes when you're on the road, you run. You keep your fitness regime up. It's admirable. And you said, "No, I'm late." And you you were.
It was good. It was good.
That was like an under 5-minute mile time right there.
Yeah, that's not going to be a pace I actually get to on a real run.
I mean, you could run Boston in under 3 in that thing. Under 2.5, maybe.
Great. More like I'm going to have trouble running later because my foot's going to be like, "Why were you running with that kind of uneven weight on you?" But here we are.
Did you make the meeting?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, we got there quickly. The Starbucks order was ready. I
Great.
didn't run with coffee.
Okay.
Vet move. No spills.
I'm accustomed to Jori arriving everywhere like that, so I don't know why this is.
See, Rob thinks I arrive everywhere like right as it's time and with a large amount of food.
Yeah. She rolled up. I told her we have 45 seconds before we go on. Andrew ruined it by telling her we had 3 minutes.
Well, there's a clock. There's a clock right there.
She's not looking at the clock, though, I'm trying
I was not even phased when you said it. I'm like, 45. That's 44 more than usual.
Well, we're here, and we're happy to be here. And all the quarterbacks on the other side of a curtain off camera that you cannot see currently in this shot. The quarterbacks made their way around the podiums today and answered all the questions. We had Fernando Mendoza this morning, who arrived yesterday. Saw him walking through the hallways last night. Stand up there and give the answers, that you would expect and that you have come to know already from the quarterback who won the Heisman and took Indiana to a national championship. He said everything with a massive smile on his face, including a question about meeting Tom Brady and the Raiders.
Yeah, who hasn't admired Tom Brady? The guy has, more Super Bowl rings than anybody. So that opportunity would be fantastic. Tom Brady, I believe, is the greatest quarterback of all time by a wide margin, and to be able to have the opportunity to be mentored by him would mean so much, and especially to learn, and I'm all about learning. So from day one, I got to learn a lot, and it's going to be a long journey, and to potentially have a mentor like that, be pretty impressive and pretty meaningful. Yeah, when I walked into the formal interview for the Raiders, I was able to say a brief hi on the phone to Brady, and so that was very special to me, and look forward to meet him in person hopefully one day and learning from him.
Mendoza was also asked, what would you tell teams that passed you over? And no one's going to pass him over here. I think it was more of like a question about like how he was overlooked coming out of high school, and he said, nothing. Because that's him. No one's going to pass him over here, right? Have you heard anything in the hallways, running or walking in the past 5 days that leads you to believe that he is going anywhere other than one, or maybe more importantly, anywhere other than to the Raiders at one?
I haven't.
I
haven't
not,
either.
But, there's certainly some opinions out there about the upside of him at one versus – if you were able to draw in a package of picks, push capital into 2027, which is going to be a super deep draft, going to have a lot of good quarterbacks in it, quarterbacks that he might slot behind if he was in the 2027 draft. So it's sort of like what's best for now and 2026, what do you have to do versus how patient can you be? And is there even an availability of moving into 2027, maybe trading out of the first and taking a run at some of the 2027 quarterbacks. Now, it's, you don't know what that class is going to look like. Who knows, right? Drew Aller, obviously we thought Drew Aller was going to be healthy and in this draft and play a whole season, right? That didn't happen. We thought Dante Moore might come out in this draft. That didn't happen, right? So you're not fully sure what's going to be in that 2027 draft, but I'm telling you, if you want to ask about the downside or any negatives, what you'll hear is the film is more limited than what you think. It's really 1 year film, basically. Mm-hmm. He played behind a good offensive line with a great running game with some other NFL players around him, really good skill position players who are going to play in the NFL or get drafted highly. Had a great defense and had impeccable coaching. So they're like, if you want to say, well, is he coming out of an adverse situation? He's really not coming out of an adverse situation. He's coming out of a great situation. And then you had quarterback Rourke a year earlier threw for, 30 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, put up some pretty good numbers. So then there's the question of, is this the kind of offense that produces numbers for a quarterback? I think he's only turned his back on the line of scrimmage 6 times. 6 times from under center in his career. So you can, and it's not like it was put on his shoulders a ton. Now, he did make big throws. Nobody questions his toughness. Everybody loves his toughness. But I think he's the number 1 pick the same reason Cam Ward was the number 1 pick last year. He separated himself clearly above the rest of the quarterbacks. Yeah. The team needs a quarterback, and he's good enough to be taken in the top 10, so you take him number 1.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, C-Rob, because I do think that the conversation around Fernando Mendoza is high floor, not that high a ceiling relative to some of the high prospects. And so then you get into this conversation of, even for teams looking at veterans on the market, there's so much of, can this guy be our bridge quarterback? Can this guy be our bridge quarterback? But if you're the Raiders, it's easier to sell a bridge quarterback a year ago when you did with Geno Smith. Can you afford back-to-back bridge quarterbacks and not having that excitement? I mean, Mark Davis, it's not just win, baby. It's also entertain, baby. They're in Las Vegas, of all places. And so I think it's hard for them to pass that up, especially when you feel like you will have a quarterback that can help you compete. And quite frankly, Clint Kubiak comes from this Shanahan system that doesn't put everything on the quarterback and wants all the skill players around. Now, the challenge is, I don't know that going in, he certainly doesn't have, in my opinion, the infrastructure that San Francisco has. I'm not sure he's got infrastructure on offense equivalent to what Seattle had. So it's a question. But when you talk about Mendoza and what he had in college, do you feel like there's some J.J. McCarthy elements, not necessarily in his skill set, but in terms of what he was asked to do and the relative success he had? Because that, when you're saying that, I'm just hearing, this is J.J. McCarthy, and do you have to worry about that?
Well, J.J. ran, he played under center at Michigan. So he did turn his back on defenses. There was an element of that. Limited film. I mean, he threw even fewer passes than obviously Fernando has. I just think when you talk to teams and you're really searching for a negative, they'll say, well, you know what, go past the Indiana film.
Yeah.
It's not great. They're like, and again, they go back to Cam Ward. They're like, look, if Cam Ward had come out a year earlier, he's like a 5th-round pick, a 4th-round pick. If Fernando Mendoza comes out a year earlier, he's maybe a 4th or 5th-round pick. He's not here. But obviously that year matters. It matters how he matches up. And as you were saying, for the Raiders, get the show started, right? Get him paired with Kubiak, from day one and start that process. You just, you hope it goes well, because the track record of coaches who end up, coaching their rookie quarterbacks, their first-round quarterbacks, it's not good. They don't last, right? So you're hoping for the best here, and, I think, Tom Brady being part of that, sure, that seems like that's certainly a positive element to this. And I will say one thing about toughness. When you talk to teams and how they value toughness at quarterback, quarterbacks who have at least above average skill and are super tough, they last in the NFL.
Yeah,
that's important.
His toughness is notable, not only in the Miami game, the national championship game, but go back to, say, the Big Ten title game, where on that opening drive he gets drilled, and you're thinking, all right, guy's dead.
Never checked out.
One play. They checked him out for one play.
I mean, he never checked out.
No. He played a great game. His brother came in for a play. You bring him back, and bam, they eventually stun Ohio State, hand the Buckeyes their first loss, and then eventually they win the national championship. I think he's the one. He's going to be the one. Nothing is going to change. But the idea that some team, I was asked today, would anyone make them an offer they can't refuse? Well, an offer you can't refuse inevitably contains multiple first-round picks, including next year's first-round pick. And I just cannot see anyone, considering what we know right now about next year's draft, giving up next year's one in this draft at all. Yeah. I'd be stunned. So if you're going to move down to the first round, it's going to be day 2 compensation next year or day 2 compensation this year. I don't see anyone trading a 27-1.
Yeah.
I just don't. And not for him. Yeah. If maybe there was a Cam Ward upside, then we'd be having a different conversation.
And don't you think, too, if you're going to move off him, you have to have, let's say it's for a defensive player, you have to have someone is an absolute home run this year, too. Whoever you're moving out of that for. So if it's Arvo Reese or whoever else, you have to know that player is going to hit. You can't afford to miss any of it.
Let's make sense. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, also when I think about the Giants trying to trade up to number 3 to the Patriots spot a couple years ago, whether that was going to be Drake May or Jaden Daniels, it was a little unclear at the time. Like, they weren't able to do that for quarterbacks wanted even more. So how much is someone really willing to give up for Fernando Mendoza when he's not a generational prospect at this point? It
Totally agree. Let's try to make sense here of the rest of the quarterback market. By the way, Carson Beck was on the podium. Drew Aller, who you mentioned, who might have been a day one pick last year if he had come out. He didn't. He came back. He hurt his ankle in the Oregon game. I believe it was the final weekend in September. Didn't just hurt it, he broke it. He said today, he kind of hesitated for a second, but he is going to throw. He was asked, could you play a game today? And he said yes, he could play a game today. So Drew Aller has had his meetings. He's the sneaky one to keep an eye on for my money, just because of how highly people had him rated, potentially, even though with a lot of flaws, last year. Carson Beck spoke today. Aller said he had a formal meeting with the Browns. Beck said he had a formal meeting with the Steelers, which I find maybe somewhat interesting, but meetings here don't make them news. Everyone is here to meet with everybody. I thought the wide receiver, Denzel Boston, was funny. He was 6'4", as advertised.
Yeah.
Who else? Zachariah Branch was like Jori's size. It blew me away. He was my size. Like, he is a little guy. It was very surprising, as a fellow small person, to see how small Zachariah Branch was today. But let's make sense of the rest of the quarterbacks. We haven't talked about Kyler Murray a lot yet. I believe that everyone here is in agreement. Kyler Murray is not going to be the Cardinals quarterback next year. Do we agree?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, you're nodding, although you made a face there, C-Rob.
I still think it matters how some of these things slide. I think I would say more probable than not he is not there.
Okay,
to me it's a two-part element, which is one, when they benched him to not have his injury guarantee vest the same way that the Miami Dolphins did with Tua, you already sent a message that we don't want to risk having to have him around. And as people have said, Mike Fleur came in and he didn't say, this is my guy.
Right.
And so once he didn't do that, to me that was like kind of strike 2, and I don't know that we need a strike 3.
Okay, so where's he going to be?
You want to take a shot?
Now they're both making a face.
It's a great question. I am curious cost of him. I mean, as I've reported through the week, there is an element of teams tell me, Kyler might not be the quarterback you want to have, but he's the quarterback you don't want to face, and he's a pain for defenses. And all the defensive coaches I talk to do not like game planning for him because of the additional element he has. That's a valuable skill set. And so even though Tua's more accurate and Tua's got more of the leadership that people seem to want, I still think of those two players that are likely to be released soon by their teams and have some money, Kyler offers more in the same way we saw Justin Fields get the contract last year, because anytime you've got that dual threat ability, there's upside. Kyler offers more than Justin, and certainly more of a proven track record, even if he's been up and down. And so I do think that he's going to get an offer. But it's challenging. I mean, Jets?
Viking?
I don't think the Vikings.
I don't think the Vikings either, throwing it out there.
I don't think the Vikings.
Steelers?
I think the Jets have everything on the table right now. I think they would consider anything at this point. And, so when I talk to a couple of teams about the quarterback slotting, I still think Malik Willis is important.
Yes.
Where he goes is going to dictate what options other agents have, what alignments make sense. But the one thing about Kyler that I thought was really interesting when you talk to teams is they said, well, just sit down and look at what your options are. Kyler versus Kirk Cousins. It's Kyler. Kyler versus Mac Jones. It's Kyler.
Really?
Is it?
Really?
I'm not sure about that.
I think it depends on what the offense is. But I think just in terms of pure skill set, what's available to you, I do think Kyler is considered a more talented quarterback than Mac Jones. Now,
physically talented.
System-wise, I think Mac Jones has got to be in the right system.
Yeah, I think the fit is different for the two of them.
I agree. I absolutely agree. But I'm just saying, I'm talking about just you're sitting there staring at talent, age, starting experience, what their top end has been.
Yeah.
What have they shown you in terms of what their top shelf is? Kyler's high. When Kyler's good is really good.
It's very good.
Yeah, it's hard to ignore that.
When they pick up the phone, though, and call the Cardinals and say, tell us about Kyler Murray, what are they going to hear?
They're going to hear what we've all heard. Right?
Correct.
I don't think the work ethic is the biggest thing. I also think there's a question of, if you're going into a Shanahan-McVay system, I mean, who are we talking about? It wasn't Lamar. It was someone recently who had that. No, it was Lamar, and who should be the coach for him. And there's this idea of the Shanahan-McVay system would not best accentuate Lamar's
Sure.
superpowers. The same thing is true for Kyler.
Right.
And so to me, if I'm a Shanahan-McVay system, I want Mac Jones over Kyler.
Yes.
If I'm just trying to have that run game, I'm trying to have as many threats, maybe I have a strong running back. I mean, almost in some ways what the Colts
Okay.
were doing with Jonathan Taylor. Let's hear it.
But here's the thing I keep getting asked by teams. They seem to be looking more and more, and this came up with Mendoza. How many quarterbacks win in this league consistently in the pocket, and where is that projecting? Pocket winning quarterbacks.
You got to be able to move.
You got to be able to move.
Got to be able.
Right.
And Kyler, when healthy,
Yeah.
I still think he has that elite club in the bag. Now,
Right.
it is a depreciation. Jeez, I'm killing myself here. It is a depreciating asset.
Correct.
The
Yeah.
running game. So you're probably not signing up for it long term. But again, I'm just telling you, I still think when we talk about landing spots, it just depends how the stack goes and where does Willis go. And what doors does that then force other teams to open up potentially for a Kyler or Mac Jones?
Willis is the key here. I was sitting in the Marriott lobby yesterday, as you guys know that I like to do, and an agent comes and they're like, so where's Malik Willis going to go? And I'm like,
Everybody
where
has
does
to.
Malik Willis want to go?
Yeah.
He can go anywhere he wants of the teams that need a quarterback because he is the number one available option and certainly available, and I would say even with the Mac Jones who could become available. And it's a little bit funny because there's still a risk there.
He's
of
6
taking
career
him.
starts.
Yeah,
3 and
I think
3.
it's a small sample size, but we are a projecting league. So
That is what we do. And then there's Anthony Richardson. We had been able to speculate, but since we last did a show, the news is out there now. Anthony Richardson has been given permission to seek a trade. Anthony Richardson is 23 years old. Fernando Mendoza is 23 years old. They're separated by 5 months. Richardson's actually a little bit older, but that just gives you a little perspective here about a young player who's had his ups and downs and only had a dozen career starts, obviously, at Florida. That has been well documented. Somebody can likely get Anthony Richardson out of Indianapolis for 30 cents on the dollar. Who do you think, C-Rob, would want to do that?
don't steal mine.
I know the Browns had a decent opinion of him when he was coming out in terms of what that ceiling was, what he could work with. I know Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings had a decent opinion of him and what he could work with. I question now, and I've heard other people make the Minnesota question, that connection. I don't know because of what happened with JJ and the ankle injury that seemed to linger a long time, and there are kind of questions about, like, come on, we got to get you back in the saddle here. And what happened with Anthony Richardson tapping out in Indianapolis.
Correct.
I think nobody wants to keep getting involved potentially with quarterbacks where you're kind of pushing them to get back into the fray. I think the Jets, that's a team that they're keeping every option on the table. Jori seems to think she knows where he's going. So
I don't think I know where he's going. I know where I want him to go.
Where?
And what makes the most sense, which is the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers are going to have a hole open up with Malik Willis leaving in free agency. And to me, I actually think they need 3 quarterbacks if they do this because of Jordan Love's injury history and Anthony Richardson's injury history. But when I think of a team that is able to develop a quarterback and turn them for a value, that's what we see for the Green Bay Packers routinely. And so even if he doesn't play much for them, and even if they just stash him for a couple years, and I know that sounds crazy when we think about the cost of a quarterback, then okay, like Malik Willis, you get a comp pick for him down the road. Maybe you trade him and you get the value. And I actually trust he'll be able to develop there, not only because the coaching staff is great, but also because the franchise is set up more patiently because they don't have a team owner, that I think that's the best option for him to go.
What does the stash look like? That's my question, because you're not picking up his 5th year.
Correct.
His 5th
No
year.
one is right.
You got 1
Right.
year.
And you got to figure that out by May.
Yeah,
So.
you have 1 year here. So whatever team is going to talk to him is going to sit there and say, okay, we're not picking up your 5th.
Yeah.
Once we get past May and that deadline, we want to do a 2-year deal with you.
But they did that with Jordan Love.
No, I'm not saying that. Well, Jordan Love, though, was their presumptive starter. They had to do it with Jordan
Fair.
Love. You had to pay.
Can I give you one? And I just hit I thought of this one. How about Tampa? He's a Florida guy. You put him behind Baker. You don't need him. It's in case of emergency, break glass. Just throwing it out there. I don't know. I haven't heard that one.
Here's my thing. I think my bias plays into this just in terms of when he came into the league and I talked to teams about him, I always go back to this one quote, and I'm going to butcher it here, but I'll just paraphrase it, where I had a GM tell me he's going to go 6 for 18 with, whatever, 2 touchdowns and however many interceptions, which is the most exciting 6 for 18 you've ever seen. And I'm like, great. What has that turned into?
Nothing.
What are we talking about here? We're still chasing, on him. And so I would just say wherever he goes, if I'm his agent, I want him to go to a place where we have seen a coach develop him, a coach who has developed multiple quarterbacks without needing starting snaps. So that's
why Green Bay makes sense.
Green Bay does make sense. Now, Green Bay had Jordan Love for 3 years. Jordan Love for 3 years as a backup before they actually had to test him out. And I remember that summer talking to Matt LaFleur prior to Jordan Love starting after Rodgers had left. And I'm telling you, Matt LaFleur had no freaking idea what was going to happen. He was like, maybe it's good. We'll see. It was like, all right, we'll see. It
turned out okay.
And it did turn out okay. But I like Green Bay as one of those. But I think, there are other situations and scenarios like, could Sean McVay get his hands on him and say, I'm going to make you a 3? You're not going to be my 2. You're going to be my deep 3. And we're going to see if we can – because, Sean's shown the ability to adjust his offense too.
Yeah.
He'll build an offense around a quarterback. The offense he ran with Jared Goff isn't the exact same offense he's running with Matt Stafford. There was some growth there that took place in the scheme. The problem with Richardson is how dramatically do you have to change an offense for that guy?
I think you would have to change dramatically. And just for Sean, until he had Garoppolo and Stetson Bennett the last couple of years, he never had a third. Right. He really only had 2. Bryce Perkins was the guy that could have been the third there. He'd be electric in the preseason, but he was never.
For somebody who can grab into a quarterback.
It's fun. I like it.
Can I ask you, though? I think there's a difference in this league between people who develop quarterbacks and people who are excellent play callers. And I don't know that I think of Sean McVay as a quarterback developer, not because I think he's not capable. I just don't think he wants to do it.
Turned around Jared Goff.
I think with Goff.
He did great, but then he was like, I'm out. He was like, I can't do this.
Because he saw the limitation of Goff's growth with him.
You think it was an athleticism limitation? I mean, does Anthony Richardson have the ability to do what Sean McVay wants him to do?
Yeah, because Goff didn't have the arm to overcompensate for lack of athleticism, and Matt Stafford absolutely has.
Can I offer that Brandon Cooks caught a ball in the end zone against the Patriots in the Super Bowl? It's a 13-10 game in the fourth quarter, and they're almost there. Sean got right to the edge and went, okay, I don't think we're good enough. I'm going to make a bold move. And then other teams try to follow suit. The Browns went, okay, we're going to do that too. It didn't work, clearly.
Kyle did it to Jimmy Garoppolo.
Right. Exactly. They made bold moves.
I'd say Brock Purdy has done a pretty solid job developing with Kyle Shanahan for
magically
physical limitations, but he also fits into the scheme perfectly. I just don't think Richardson's an easy thing to answer.
I agree.
So
I agree.
Where he ends up, I'm very, very interested because I don't know what your experience is right now, but I do not have any team that is hot as a pistol to go out there and get Anthony Richardson.
I totally agree. I haven't heard it.
To be clear, I'm not even sure Green Bay wants him. I just think he should want that.
It's a good fit. It's an off-season think piece. What's the best fit for coming up next? Coming up next, we'll actually tell you what we learned last night number 1 of the drills. Because, people actually get on the field and run around and do things as well. That is Charles. That is Jori. I'm Andrew. This is Inside Coverage.
Kirby may not win another national title. I think he's the best head coach in college football right now. So it sounds kind of like an oxymoron. It's not. Well, it's possible I'm wrong that he's the best. But even if I'm right that he is the best, it's possible that he won 2 of them back-to-back years, and that's it. That's what Dabo Swinney did. He won a couple, and then I don't think Dabo will ever win another national title. What does that mean? It means he's one of the best to ever do it, and he's a Hall of Famer. That's what it means for Dabo Swinney.
All right, so let's talk about fights we want to see 2026. GC, you just gave us a nice little teaser there, so why don't you go first?
My concrete one, my number 1 that I want to see is still remaining Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev. Whether it's at 170, whether it's Islam going down to 155, the star power that these two guys have with the run that Islam is on, with the undefeated record of Ilia Topuria, it's just a match that I am craving more than any other.
Isaiah Stewart is underrated, Sharp. Way underrated. 37% from three. It's a really good pick. People think about Isaiah Stewart as this tough guy who can shoot, good at rim finisher and all that too. But in reality this year, he's become all defensive player candidate. He's become a great switch defender. Isaiah Stewart, one of the most underrated players in the whole league.
The NFL's so brutal, man. It's such a brutal. I thought to myself when Jonathan Gannon got fired, I thought, did they not just wish him a happy birthday? They did.
Hey.
They wished him a happy birthday, and then they fired him on the same day. So that's the NFL, folks. That hook is real. It's out there.
Yeah. I mean, it's bad. It's bad to be fired. He does, however, get a lovely parting gift.
It's inside coverage on Yahoo. The drills actually got going on Thursday. Had the linebackers, had the D linemen working out, and Ohio State linebacker, he used to be a safety, Sonny Styles, absolutely stole the show. He's 6'4", he's like 240 pounds, and here's what he did last night. He had a vertical of 43.5, which, just a little perspective, is better than Calvin Johnson in 2007. He had a long jump last night that was not only the best of anyone last night, but it would have been the best for the entire combine last year, better than Nicky Manwari, who went in the second round and had a great rookie season. And he also ran a 4.46. Other than that, he did nothing. He ran the Triple Crown, basically. He hit the Triple Crown. He is in legit conversation now for the top 5. Like the number one Buckeye off the board, people have assumed for years is going to be Caleb Downs. It's going to be Sonny Styles. And if I'm the Jets, I'm watching that last night saying either Sonny Styles or David Bailey ran a 4.51. Like, I'm in a really good spot. Matter of fact, I might be in a spot now where I could trade down if anybody was blown away, C-Rob, by something they saw last night.
Yeah, I mean, you're sitting there coming into this and you're knowing you're not getting your quarterback, or if you liked Mendoza, you're not getting your quarterback at 2. And then you're confronted with, okay, well, we need someone to star to become that number 2 pick. Well, now you're walking out of it, and I see a path to a linebacker at number 2, which that never happens. I see a path to an edge at number 2. Okay, well, that happens all the time, but that's another option. Even Downs, I don't love it. But again, if they're like, he is the most complete player out there, and you're not going to be asking us about this pick 3 years from now when we have a top 5 defense. And guess what? Just like all these other top 5 defenses, we have an elite safety who can move around. I wouldn't have a problem with it. That's what you want in terms of coming out of this with options. And now the Jets, I think, not only have an option, as you said, to stick and pick, they have an option that, hey, if somebody else wants to come up, maybe we drop a pick or 2.
And I should point out that Arvell Reese was not a slouch. He didn't do the positional drills, but he ran a 4.46.
Right.
So he checked that box as well, and you might still be Team Arvell Reese there.
Remember, too, the Jets have already started compiling. They have 3 first-round picks in 2027. The Jets are positioned really nicely. Darren Muji's done a really, really good job as a general manager there very quickly.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we keep saying the 2027 draft, that's what we need to talk about. But when I was talking to an AFC talent evaluator this morning, they're like, it's actually not a bad draft. It's just the strengths of the draft are not premium positions. It's a good linebacker draft. There are strengths at running back. There are strengths at safety. And so when I'm with scouts and they're talking, they're like, well, maybe you have to convince your ownership or even your GM that you feel good enough with the positional value up there. But if you know you can get a great player who's going to help your team, you should go take that player. And again, you have to have that conversation. I understand there's a salary cap element, although the salary cap is officially over $300 million.
301.
1.2, right, which is, we'll get to that. But I do think there's this element of, look what the Lions did when they got people like Jahmyr Gibbs. And they've taken some of these high picks who the position made no sense, but they're great players, and they played well.
Yeah, I mean, the Lions, in the draft they got killed for, they took, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Campbell, and Brian Branch.
Right. And all those positions. That's literally, that draft of the Lions is what this year's draft is.
Right. But that is, we talked before about, hey, the second contract. Well, as a GM, I have to worry about my second contract as well. That was the one draft where you had Brad Holmes and Spielman there as well. Just go, we don't care. We're taking the best football players. We're going to win with these guys right now. And every analytics guy on Twitter can make fun of us, and they did that Thursday night. It was a laugh fest. but they took good football players that helped them win immediately.
I may or may not have heard from someone I visit Lions training camp about remembering them getting, I think it was an F from a Yahoo Sports analyst for that draft. So, yeah, they remembered. I'm like, that was 2 years ago.
Don't look at me. I wasn't.
No one's looking at you.
It wasn't me.
I'm
not saying I.
I was thinking of saying something.
I told you when that happened, right?
Yeah.
I was thinking of saying something about draft grades, but this is my first time that I will be working with Yahoo. Obviously, in the neighborhood of the draft. We're draft adjacent right now, 2 months out. I used to at NFL Network all the time. We would sit in meetings the day after the draft, the Sunday, the Monday, and they would say, we're going to do draft grades here. I'm like, oh, my God, please, no. Please, I get it. It's content. Everybody wants it. Yeah. And we all discuss the draft. I mean, there's an entire industry, for Pete's sake. But I am of the belief that you need 3 years.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean you can't give a totally unnecessary, way too soon grade, but I'm like, I don't really believe in it because how do we know anything?
You know what else I keep hearing this week? I've had multiple people this week tell me, or I was in a conversation and someone said, who's your favorite player?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, are you asking for my favorite player or my most highly ranked player? Because it's not the same.
Okay.
And I think that is so important to keep in mind. How many teams where, hey, maybe this guy has the best measurables and he's already got the performance, but I trust this guy's ability to reach his potential more than I trust that one. And that's who I actually want to stake my name to in the draft meeting.
Denzel Boston is, I hear that about him a lot, where it's like, you don't love, maybe his shuttle's not going to be great.
Mm-hmm.
But like, the dude is huge and he's going to run fast as hell.
And he said today that he is going to do everything but the bench. So he's going to go work out. He is going to run. He had a great line. Stop me if I've said it before. Stacey Dales said, and Stacey's tall, Stacey College Basketball Hall of Famer, Stacey Dales, or Oklahoma Hall of Famer Stacey Dales. How would you describe your catch radius? He said, I'm a vacuum cleaner.
That's a great quote.
He's funny. He was glib. I really like the guy. And, by the way, he scored 20 touchdowns the last 2 seasons.
And he waited his turn there.
Yes.
He sat behind other guys, and it wasn't like, well, geez, he just couldn't get on the field. He couldn't get on the field because there were other NFL players in front of him, 3 other NFL players in front of him. And the last guy I remember, well, his short shuttle's going to be terrible. Maybe he's not explosive in and out of breaks. He runs super fast and he's big, but that was DK Metcalf, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, it took us about, a week into the NFL season to go, that guy
that's
dropped
the guy.
60? Where did he go off the board?
Is any coach going to rip their shirt off in a Denzel Boston combine meeting?
Ben
this
Johnson
year?
might. Maybe. We'll see. Ben Johnson's so far. Who amongst
shirtless
the coaches have been shirtless coaches? Just Ben, right?
Ben.
Anyone else? No, I think
that's
it. John Schneider is a general manager, so
yes.
we got that.
Yeah, but he's usually shirtless.
Jason Kelsey at the parade, not a coach, but didn't Jason Kelsey go shirtless?
Doesn't count. He's been shirtless all over the place.
What is it? Whatever the magazine is, Sexiest People Alive, Jason Kelsey? Is it
yes.
People? I don't know.
I don't remember.
I know about that list.
Magazines? What are magazines? Let's talk arm length.
Yeah.
Because Ruben Bain, many people see as a top 10 pick, or Cassius Howell as well. First round pick, second round pick. Arm length is a big deal.
It is.
And what are you hearing, Jori, as you run through hallways about arm length?
Yeah, Ruben Bain, not a vacuum cleaner.
Not a vacuum cleaner.
Length, but I do think.
No, maybe one of those handheld ones that you could.
Dustbuster.
Yes.
And his exact was what, 30 and
5/8. 5/8. I'll get it.
7/8.
Stand by.
Yeah, 30 and 7/8 is what it was. And so I was with some scouts who were like, look, under 31 is really hard to me. And I know it's weird to have that strong of a line, but I was asking them, I'm like, okay, well, do you feel better in a 3-4 versus a 4-3?
Mm-hmm.
Are there certain coaches who can help compensate for that? Are there certain schemes that can help compensate the same way that you feel like if a guy doesn't have a certain quickness, well, some things are going to help him? And the scouts I was with are like, look, if he's going against a Tyron Smith or a Trent Williams, how do you get over that arm length? And so it actually is something real. There is definitely a belief of if you are succeeding and performing in spite of your physical limitations, that is a checked box. That is something to be proud of. But scouts are pretty strict on arm length, particularly that 31.
This is 30 and 7/8.
What was Micah Parsons' arm length? Because that is something that I'm curious about. Micah's not very big, and we didn't necessarily have that same question.
This is the Jack Campbell conversation on defense, right? We had the whole conversation last year.
Now, there's also
Will
been
Campbell.
I'm sorry. There's also been a conversation that they don't like the measurements arm length out of here, and that there were a bunch of guys last year who had longer arm measurements when they did pro days.
Right. Yeah. It's always fun.
It's always
to
fun.
see that you get a little bit faster.
And hand sizes
maybe a little
can
taller.
get bigger.
Yeah, I mean, you know that arms really grow in your 20s.
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
clearly. I mean, you could also learn to stretch it as much as possible.
Yeah, shoulder flexibility.
Exactly.
A little home cooking, I think, with the tape measure in your friendly confines. Look, the reason why arm length has never gone away is because we've had example after example after example of the easier it is for a large human being to get close to you, the harder it is for you to not get taken advantage by that. Will Campbell, you want to have long arms as an offensive tackle because you want to be able to set and keep guys off of you, right? Not controlling you. You don't want Myles Garrett beating the living crap out of you because he can get into you too easy. It's the same thing with Bain. You get caught up in the trash with offensive linemen who can grab you and control you because you just don't have the arms to push them off. Now, you can negate that with elite speed, great footwork. I mean, it's kind of similar for offensive tackles and edges. You have some of the same traits that can overcome it.
Or you can move him to 3 technique.
I mean, what do we have? As soon as the Super Bowl ended, we were like, was Will Campbell a guard? Because it looks like he's a guard now that we watched him in the Super Bowl. He was. Look,
he was.
I'm not banging on the guy.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm just saying, like, that is going to follow him forever. Anytime there is a negative performance or a lull in his play, and Bain is now in that same category where it's like, hey, if you're not lifting off like a rocket, is this, should we have thought a little more seriously about the whole arm length thing? I think it's just like quarterback hands. If you have sub 9-inch hands and you drop a ball in the NFL, people are like, oh, Kenny Pickett, you got those tiny little hands. That's why you're fumbling so much.
The other thing as well, I just drew a total blank. Oh, injuries, right. About injuries we did or didn't know about. You're talking about Will Campbell here, obviously. We knew he was banged up. There's a question how much he was banged up. Hey, how much was Drake May actually banged up in the Super Bowl shoulder. And down the stretch as well? Nussmeier, Garrett Nussmeier today is on the podium, and they say, hey, tell us about your injury. Or how were you injured last year? Yeah, I was. I got hurt the second day of fall camp. He said it was an ab injury where it felt like I was getting stabbed in the stomach every time I threw the football. And a bunch of the LSU people jumped in and said, wait a minute, hold on. You had your coach say the entire year that you were healthy. So clearly he wasn't healthy. No one was questioning Garrett Nussmeier. It was clearly we believed him. But it just goes back to last season, and college injury reporting is different than NFL injury reporting.
Right.
Friendly reminder, you're not always going to get the truth from Brian Kelly or whomever with your college injury news.
I thought it was out there that Nussmeier never looked the same after.
Oh, we know he never looked the same. He just revealed today. It's like, he goes, I didn't even really figure it out. We didn't figure it out what the injury was until like 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago.
Get, whether it's abs, obliques, that whole area, I mean, you laugh, you cough, you use your arm, you use
everything.
Your head. It's connected to everything. It's not fun.
Occasionally you get hit in that area, too.
You do, and that's why.
Yes, but I'm saying even if you wear the padding, though, it's connected to the entire system, and that's not sufficient to do it, even if you get it shot up. So I think what's interesting is I was asking talent evaluators last night about Garrett Nussmeier. I'm like, what can you tell me about Nuss? And I was in Dallas when his father, Doug Nussmeier, was, I guess, quarterback's coach then. He's now the offensive coordinator for the New Orleans Saints. And they're like, we believe he can play. One of them actually thought he would become a starter. The other one said, I don't know about starter, but I do think he'll have a long career in the NFL. They both felt like he had the skill set and that this year was just this bad confluence of injury, bad offensive line, kind of a mess of a team all over the place, and he was trying to fight through it rather than just sitting out. Do you disagree?
No, I just, as you're sitting here talking about this, I'm like, this quarterback group is so clean. Like, there's always problems.
Same with Ty Simpson. I got injured the second half of the season. Wasn't the same.
No, it's true. Yeah. I mean,
Drew Aller. I broke my ankle. Now I'm back. Hey, I'm still the guy that maybe could have been in the first round last year. Let's throw out what happened in 2025. To your point, there are a lot of these in this class. And the guy who won the Heisman who's going to go number 1 overall 12 months ago, never, ever would we have sat here having this conversation about him.
And maybe that's why teams look at him getting busted in the face against Miami, bloody, and going, I'm not going anywhere. I'm good. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, I mean, maybe that's why you sit there and you stare at this class and you go, okay, well, let's look at this guy got hammered.
Yeah.
And just kept showing up.
Let's not hold his journey against him. Let's look at his journey and say that's a reason why we like him.
I already know where you're going with this.
So I feel like Sirov's going to finish the show by busting us in the face so we get contract extensions.
How about that?
I would do that for you guys.
Would you? You would punch us in the face so that we can get paid.
That's how you know. I think the money would be coming in a lawsuit, HI lawsuit. For
I promise there will be no throwing of hands on this show. Maybe there might be at a Starbucks at the JW a little bit later.
Can we get Frank in too? I do that for Frank.
You do that for Frank?
I also punch Frank in the face.
No, you punch Frank because you wanted to punch Frank.
I was going to say, so generous.
And we should do it at the Starbucks and call it the Thrilla in Vanilla Latte.
Yes.
You like that? Okay, coming up next, tag George Pickens, you're it. What does it mean for the Cowboys? Jori empties the notebook. I promise we're not punching anybody. That's next on Inside Coverage.
Penn State has imported Iowa State. It's the best way I could explain it. Penn State has now taken Rocco Beck. They took RB1. They took wide receiver 1. They took 3 offensive linemen. I detest that this is how college football works at the moment, but it's the way it works at the moment. And that is when you take a head coach, part of the thinking behind hiring the head coach is who he can bring with him. And in Matt Campbell's case, it was basically whoever he wants.
I'm very fascinated to see which direction they go here, because I think that Roman, this is the deal with him. He's not terrible. He's not offensive as an offensive coordinator, but he can get you to a certain point. You need somebody else to get you to the next point. I think he's done a good job with Herbert, getting him to run more and getting him to push the ball down the field. Now I'd like to see, someone kind of just, again, give him some more quicker options. That's the type of stuff I'd like to see from the next coach.
Tom Aspinall, Cyril Gahn, that needs to be resolved, right? Hamzat Shemaiah versus Sean Strickland. But I will accept Hamzat Shemaiah versus Fluffy Hernandez. If Fluffy beats Sean Strickland, I'll take either of those. Here's another one of my, but you accept these as secondary.
100%.
Armin Sarukian versus UFC lightweight champion. We cannot just keep having Armin doing grappling matches and eating and all this stuff.
I'm kind of okay with it.
No, I'm not.
No.
I know you love it.
You get the first pick in the underrated player draft. Who are you taking?
Jalen Duren has never made an All-Star game. He's never made an All-NBA team. He's gotten so much better as a scorer this year. Jalen Duren is like a legit All-Star this year. And so because everybody talks about the Detroit situation like it's trash and Cade Cunningham, I'm going to say he's still a little bit underrated, and he's my number 1 pick.
We're back on Inside Coverage, and we're back talking about the Cowboys because we're contractually mandated to talk about the Cowboys. Also, because there's actually news. As Jori is reporting and has been reporting, the Cowboys have placed the franchise tag on George Pickens, which means he is guaranteed $28 million US dollars this year to play quarterback for, take 2. Wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys, which is nice unless you realize that he and every other player in his situation would prefer a long-term deal. Jori, how does this play out?
Yeah, this is interesting. So on Friday today, George Pickens received the franchise tag from the Cowboys, specifically the non-exclusive franchise tag, which means he can still negotiate with other teams. I asked people around the league. They weren't so surprised by this. They didn't really think it was an issue, but he has the ability to entertain offers.
But no one's going to give up 2 number 1s, right?
Yeah, right. I don't think it's a real risk, but they were comfortable enough with where they're at. And yes, it should be somewhere in the $28-29 million range now that we finally have this official salary cap set for 2026 at $301.2 million. They'll be able to get the exact prices for all of these players. To me, this is a starting point, but it could end up being an ending point. I'm not sure they get a multi-year deal done by the July 15th deadline, and here's why. I think when you start this, George Pickens inspires more confidence from the Cowboys in his 1,400-plus yard season, 9 touchdowns on the field than he does off the field, and also on the field in his best moments than every moment. I mean, that Detroit Lions game, there were questions about his efforts.
Absolutely.
The Las Vegas Raiders game, he's missing curfew, bringing CeeDee Lamb with him, and they weren't playing at the beginning of the game. It's not a perfect bill of health, even if he caused fewer distractions this year than he did in his 3 years with the Pittsburgh Steelers, but you got to ask this question. And so you start there. I think secondly, this is a premium position. We were just talking about non-premium positions in the draft. Receivers, expensive, and so yes, he's going to get $28 and change million, which is good pay and a huge raise from what he was previously getting on his 3rd-round pick rookie contract. But CeeDee's making $34 million, and when I talk to people around the league of what a multi-year extension would look like, some of them were saying $36 million, which not only becomes very expensive because you'd have Dak making $60 million a year, CeeDee Lamb making $34 million, and George making $36 million in this potential scenario. And obviously you could play with the cap numbers, but that would be the average annual value.
That's $130 million out of your 301.
And you also have to say, well, how would CeeDee Lamb react if he's all of a sudden no longer making the most money on the receivers? And you're telling everyone, we know, look, people around the league will tell you George Pickens is more talented than CeeDee Lamb. Whether he's going to reach that ceiling is a bigger question because CeeDee Lamb has shown it consistently for more time. So I'd say that's number 2 in terms of the cost and the potential dynamics. Number 3 is a year ago, before the Micah Parsons trade, there was this decade-plus long history of if you're Dak, if you're CeeDee, if you're DeMarcus Lawrence, if you're Zeke, if you wait, you'll get the top of the market record-setting value. And so the agents were not inclined to particularly move with the Cowboys. Well, now the Cowboys said, no, we don't want to do that for Micah, particularly when there are some leadership questions they had about him. And so that kind of changes this calculus. So if the Cowboys take the logic they had on Micah Parsons of great player, some questions about his ability to do it in the biggest moments and always do it, and questions about the locker room, okay, we don't want to pay him top of market at a premium position of $40 million, $30 million. If you take that logic, you're not giving George Pickens the contract now. You're saying we want to wait another year and have more of a sample size. So that's where I think this goes. I would not be surprised if they play out the tag. I'm sure there will be conversations. I also think that David Mulugeta doesn't give discounts. And that's his agent.
And he was also Micah Parsons' agent.
I'm telling you, I don't think a lot of teams out there are totally unhappy that he plays another year for the Cowboys. Because
they want to see it blow up.
I think this free agency for him would have fallen into the desperation index. And what I mean by that is when you look back, the 49ers, there was a time they thought, we're going to get Brandon Ayuk for $25 million. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown signs this deal, and next thing you know, you can't get Brandon Ayuk for less than like 30 to 32. And the Niners are like, I mean, we got one great year with him. Like, I don't think, we're uncomfortable doing this. Go ahead, shop yourself. So what happens? Who comes to the table for Brandon Ayuk? The Patriots, who are desperate as hell. The Browns, who are desperate as hell, and the Steelers, who are desperate as hell. And Ayuk's like, I don't want to go play for any of those franchises. And so the Niners are like, all right, well, let's do the deal here. They do the deal, nuclear meltdown, right? Like, obviously there's injuries, but it went beyond just the injuries. There's friction with him. I think that teams believe that it could just be a one-year tag situation, that the Cowboys aren't ultimately going to want to have to pay what would happen with a second franchise tag. And then you have teams out there that would be more comfortable paying him after they've seen him do it for 2 years with the Cowboys versus just the 1 year. And by the way, it's not great.
No.
It's not great that just prior to all this coming down, a report gets out about, oh, you know what? He was kind of a pain in the butt to deal with at times behind the scenes.
A lot of infrastructure needed to keep him on track. And by the way, if I'm David Mulugeta, his agent, I'm okay playing out another year on the tag because the same way we saw when
But is the player okay?
I think he should be. He is going to make way more next year. The salary cap is going to go up. I get that you want the guarantees money, and you just have to understand, but he is more likely to make more money next year from any team if he plays for the Cowboys this year because the infrastructure on the field and with the locker room is better fit and able to support him than most teams have right now.
When the Cowboys made the trade, right, I think a lot of people, myself included, said, be careful what you ask for here. And their attitude, understandably, was like, no, we're going to take the risk. Big deal. And let's say he walks. We'll get the compensatory pick back. Big deal. Well, now you're kind of in the best case, worst case scenario. He was more than the player that you expected. But now you have to make the decision, do we really want to guarantee him more money? And if we don't, is he really going to be able to handle playing on the tag?
But there's also the flip side of that, which is your best chance of getting George Pickens on his best behavior might be putting him in another contract year so that he has to be on behavior if he wants the money.
So you think he's going to be cool with this and he's not going to show up on the third week of training camp and finally say, all right, all the games are over, I'm here. You think he's going to be an active participant?
You can't get a deal done after July 15th.
No, I understand that, but that doesn't mean you're going to be happy about it.
I think he'll be there because I think what's different than this versus the Ayuk, all that, if you're saying you're allowed to seek a trade, that's different than you're playing on the tag where after July 15th you can't do anything.
No, I understand that.
So I think that actually helps them here. And will he be okay with it? I can't tell you what he's going to think about it today on March 10th, on July 14th.
No player likes the tag.
That's my point.
Okay, but most of these players who get tagged have done this at a high level for 3 years, I would say, not 1 year.
Yeah.
I know he had another 1,100-yard season in the middle of
I
his
don't think he's
Pittsburgh
most
time.
A, I don't think he's most players. B, you're once again going back into an offense that does have another dominant wide receiver. There's no guarantee CeeDee Lamb gets hurt next year, right? Which honestly, to me, when I really felt like I watched George and I'm like, oh my God, my opinion is changing here. This guy is a number one. That was when CD went down and he carried the show, right? So
absolutely.
From 1 year to the next, you don't know how a wide receiver's performance is ultimately going to fluctuate. You have to. It tends to be consistent if there's health around him. So we have to hope Dak stays completely healthy. We have to hope the offensive line stays healthy. We have to hope they find a running game again, right? I mean,
I don't see a place he's going to play where he's more likely to do well. I mean, Patriots, Drake May's playing great at quarterback, but you need that other receiver on the other side to have your production.
I agree. I don't think there's a place where he's more likely to play well, but there are places where he would be paid.
True.
He would have more years of guaranteed money.
I would be far more reluctant as one of the other GMs writing him a massive check saying, come in here and be our number one and be our leader in that room than I would the Cowboys saying, let's stick around for another year.
You know where I wouldn't? I wouldn't if I was Joe Shane.
Okay.
I wouldn't if I was Monty Ossenfort. I wouldn't if just pick every GM who is on the hot seat.
Sure.
And go, hey, you know what? Either this guy helps me stay and I look great.
And you're giving up the picks for him?
Yeah, that's
no.
No one's giving up two number ones.
The picks
for that
he won't be traded.
Right. Draft
you're right.
No, he won't be traded.
You're right about the picks. I mean, that won't. It's untenable.
Real quick, the salary cap Jori mentioned is 301. Just a little perspective here. In the 2020 season, when the cap was set here right now at the Combine, right before COVID hit, that cap was like 198, right?
That's so crazy.
Right about $200 million. In 2021, remember, they had the belt tightening. Everyone agreed we're going to pull the cap back because of COVID and the money lost. In 2020, it went down to like 186. 85. And that was 2021. We are now north of $300 million. So it is up 50% basically since then. It had been the window like 301 to 304, 305. Potentially it is on the low end of that window. Do you think it changes anything for any team notably?
I mean, look, when I was asking teams how much does this matter, it's mostly if they're going to start having all their projections for how to handle their cap this year and in future years, you want the actual numbers to be crunching so you're not playing with fake numbers. I did hear from a team that was a little surprised it was at the 301 range. I don't know if the league usually tries to project it more that you're not disappointed, so to say it's in the low range. It's still massive. The other thing we kind of have to watch for is this is the salary cap, but I think the league is interested in cracking down a little bit on the cash that teams are spending in order to create more parity from team to team, because I do think that there are certain teams who don't have the cash, they're able to do it, and the teams that have the cash have a massive advantage in how they structure their contracts, and it is leading to, I think the league believes, some competitive inequity. So that'll be something to watch in the coming years of whether the league wins on that, whether the teams win on that, and how that plays out as the salary cap.
The Raiders don't have enough to put in escrow to compete with this.
No,
there's no way. Mark
there are
Davis
other teams
has
as well. The Bengals, for example, there are some teams, just layman's terms, that are property rich, right? And they don't have the cash flow to write these massive checks with all this upfront money that you need to do big free agent deals. It's not baseball. Don't get me wrong.
Extension deals.
Yes, but there is a difference when it comes to cash flow. How liquid are you? And that truly does matter.
I'm telling you, this is why they're harping on that 18th game and the international schedule. Bob Kraft told everybody.
So
he said you want the cap to keep going up. Be our partner. Let's open up foreign markets to television contracts and everything else. I'm telling you, I think the owners feel like how much more can we squeeze out of a domestic market with this salary cap?
It's also a long play as well. You realize that your big breakthrough is when you get all these international markets, when you get the young fans in those markets to grow up and pay it forward and be NFL fans.
Right. What's your demographic look like in terms of a spending audience 18 to 45?
And when you can get the Black Friday game streaming in over 200 countries, believe me, you're going to hear that number over and over and over again, that we were distributed into over 200 countries when you could stream it internationally, and that is the promised land.
And I think there's also a flag football element of this that
Absolutely.
I didn't realize how real it was until this week talking to people because, yes, I know it's coming to the Olympics. Yes, I know that every time we go to owners' meetings, the league's like, here's the press conference on flag football. I think that the league may have this vision of if we can create pro flag football leagues, women's and men's, and it can play in the off season in that summer before the NFL plays in the fall, that might be something that eventually goes to TV contracts.
The most successful entry into the game. It's part of the reason why the NBA proliferated. What do you need? A ball and a hoop.
Yeah.
Flag football. What do you need? A ball. Flex.
Especially internationally as well. And that's how you get the kids internationally.
Yeah.
Having worked for the league for all those years, I could tell you anyone in any league building the last 3 or 4 years will say jokingly or not jokingly, the only thing that anybody cares about is international and flag. International and flag. And when you can put international and flag together.
Yeah. Well, and I know this speaks to you, Andrew, given your past experience. I had someone tell me today that they feel like the way the league used to think arena football was the history of that off season and how you can grow it. They now think flag football is that future.
Yeah, because the ratings for spring leagues. Look, I think spring leagues serve a purpose for the players. I think they're really good for guys still trying to get back into the league or guys who maybe got overlooked and they weren't at training camp and this is another shot. They're really good. Traditionally, the ratings and the attendance have simply never been there. They're programming, right? The networks will say, hey, it's 3 hours of a football game. We'll throw it on. It's reasonably cheap to produce, and we get 3 hours of content. But in terms of actually moving the needle, it doesn't happen.
I agree with you. I don't.
Okay.
I want to make sure for Woody Johnson that we get one thing in about the report cards.
Oh, okay. We have exactly a minute. Okay.
Go.
My thing, maybe we can all get one. 18 clubs, C+ or worst, from the players rating their home field.
The Steelers being the worst?
F-.
At Acrisure?
Absolutely awful.
It was, I was there week 6, the Browns-Steelers games. Killebrew blew his knee out, and then Chris Boswell sunk into the turf there trying to hit a field goal. I had multiple players tell me it was the worst field they had seen anywhere at any level in their career.
And even after they resodded that field, because, again, they share it with Pitt for college, there were still dirt patches and holes and divots and all of that. It's not good.
Not good.
So players are pissed. Get the continuity together. That's what they're trying to tell the league when it comes to the standards of the field. I
had fun doing this week, guys. In our final 30 seconds, I'm glad we got the band together.
Yeah, can we be in person together more often?
Yeah.
Except if Charles is going to punch us in the face every time. I think it's more of like a one-time thing. Get the money, go.
I only have one regret this week, and that I didn't take my phone out and get you running down the hallway.
Yeah.
Just wait.
Jori running a 40 down the JW hallway.
That was the 40. Not run, Rich, run. Run, Jori, run with a backpack.
With a backpack. My PT is going to be like, what did you do?
Charles Robinson, Jori Epstein, I'm Andrew Siciliano. So long, everybody.